Hey everyone, we're going to be doing a advanced Inferno tips and tricks video today, and it's going to be sort of the complement to the sub 60, sub 55 resources, and it's going to be filling in all the gaps that I've sort of left out in the other vids. So I haven't talked about Chin Chomper usage, I haven't talked about phantom barraging, I haven't talked about instant solutions to certain waves and off ticks and really nice melee traps and stuff. And that's all going to be covered in this in a fairly concise form. I'm going to be taking clips from the sub 60, the sub 55 one, and a couple of other places to illustrate all these points together. This is the gear I'm going to be rocking, and it's a pretty standard Chin Chomper, no ancestral setup. You can add another stam if you really want to, or another range pot to this, but generally I like to just keep it as it is and fill the rest with stam fuse. Right, so let's have a little talk about chins first of all. The thing to keep in mind to begin with is you need to make sure not to overuse them. They're good on 3 targets or more. They're pretty similar to blowpipe on 2 targets or more, although they are slightly better on 2 targets when used correctly. You have to be very careful though, because as soon as you chin a 2-target stack, you're likely to want to switch to blowpipe, even if you haven't for sure killed one of the targets. Just to make sure that if you did, then at least you're doing more optimal DPS. So in short, blowpipe is never a bad thing compared to chins, which can be a bad thing, so use them carefully. When it comes to 6 nibbler waves like this, you should always barrage to begin with, whether it be a freeze or a blood barrage. Blood barrage if you need the HP, freeze if you don't, and this is to stop their movement so that when they die, they're not moving before they die, and that's not something that carries over, wasting even more time before the actual death animation begins. This next bit here is just going to quickly cover blobs dying and how you can use the time in that death animation to hit other things. So as you just saw there, which I'll replay in a second, when I went for that blob there, I made sure that I left the nibblers alive on the pillar, and I returned to them in the time where the blob was dying. And this is essentially free time that you can use effectively, and you have either 2 blood bite hits or 1 to 2 chins, so 4 ticks I guess, of time where you can do things, and that's quite a lot of time where you're just sitting around waiting for it to die. And if you use it correctly, then you can take out at the very least a bat usually, or deal some good damage to a ranger or whatever it may be that's remaining. And this is something that you want to try and do for almost every blob that you come across. Not everyone you'll be able to do it with, and especially when it comes to major waves, you do want to kill the major first every time. There's almost no circumstances where you'd end up killing the blob before the major to try and do anything in the blob animation, because the major can just of course respawn it immediately. However, for all other waves, unless there's something really interesting going on, you probably want to just kill that blob first. It's going to make life easier, and of course you save those ticks in between. So a wave or 2 later, I find myself in this position, and it's really important to note that I decide to T-bow the right-hand side blob here and not the left one. The main reason for this is because those nibblers, those bloblets are going to clump up, whereas if I was to kill this guy over here and then do things in the intermission ticks, that melee is going to drag towards me and away from the clump. To sum up what I'm really getting at here, it's just be aware of if you have options between killing NPCs at different times. Make sure that if you're going to kill that blob, it better be dragging that melee towards you, or you better be able to push yourself in a position such that even if it does drag for 1 or 2 tiles, it's still in a chinnable area with the other 2. But in short, kill it from the north side or the east side. You kill it from any other side, it's going to drag away from you. This wave start here just contains a nice little move that you can incorporate into your runs, and all it does is it's just a little quality of life where, as you see, as I attack that bat there, as I did that, I took a step to the north side to make sure that I would engage the bat before it engaged me. Just a little reprioritization of the order in which you get attacked, and you can do that quite simply by just moving back and moving back into it or getting dragged into it. You can do this at almost any point in the run, and it just saves you maybe that one range level that really matters. I mentioned this briefly in the sub 60 run, but it's even more relevant now that we're trying to go fast. If you're shooting a major and it's the last thing alive with a twisted bow, same applies for Jad, but mostly just the majors, you want to kill it while you're standing right next to it, so your arrow has 0 travel time. Simple concept, and a generally simple thing to start incorporating into your runs, and it does save a tremendous amount of time. This next clip here is going to be about setting up really nice flick cycles, especially when you're running a 2-tick pattern like I am here. And it's not so much to just weird flex flick everything, it's more to open up your possibilities. For example, in this clip, I was thinking I want to get that ranger under control so that if I decide to attack him at some point, I'm not going to drag out. In addition to that, if I want to blowpipe that major, I need to be closer. And if I was to try and pipe it from where I was standing before, I would have been dragged out. As it turned out here, I eventually do want to pipe it, so being in this position where I'm not under pressure to move out from the pillar, and I can do so in my own time, and especially early, helps a ton. As a good rule of thumb, try and set up early flicks and try and move out from the pillar whenever you can do. Once you have everything in a nice flick cycle, again, especially 2-ticking, everything's a lot easier to handle and there's nothing to really think about in the long run, because everything is already either within attackable range generally once it's on a pillar, or it's again under control and it's not gonna hit you as you come out from behind the pillar. So I'm just throwing this little clip in as a really nice example of a west side pillar off tick, first using the ranger and then coming into the major. This also puts that blob on a really nice 2-tick cycle, so everything sort of aligns just absolutely perfectly whenever you do that movement. On this example, I want to show a really nice and very convenient melee safe spot that you can use anytime an NPC spawns where that major is spawned and it is attacking you ranged wise. So a blob would do, a ranger would do, and a major would do. And you can simply just come across, and that tile specifically there will always trap the melee, because it's for whatever it is, be it the blob or the ranger, it's the 4th tile down from the northwestern side of the NPC, I suppose, and it will just be a natural safe spot like a pillar. But more specifically, like whenever that melee spawns there, it's never going to drag further around, so that's always safe. Thought I'd throw in an interesting chin setup you can use here on the ranger and the blob. This also works if the ranger is to the east of the blob and the blob is to the west. You can simply kill the blob behind, take one step back, and chin the middle NPC behind the ranger, hitting the southwest tile. In this case, it'll be the ranger. You must take the step back here in order to align them. And if the blob is to the west of the ranger, you need to stand in the middle of the ranger, and then the melee will pull instead, which is a little bit more optimal. But this always results in some really nice XP drops, and it's just one of those little fancy moves that you can pull off whenever you have that kind of stack and just make it part of your run. This next little chin trick is between any given blob and any melee that is coming in, generally from the north or the east, and you can use it to stack it up and just chin it on its southwest tile. So ideally you would run round to the south side of the blob here if you could do, and then it will spawn where the ranger is always going to overlap with all other 3 NPCs. In this case, this wasn't the greatest setup or anything, but it just illustrates the idea of chinning on that tile with the addition of bloblets, that's all. This next one coming up is one of my favorite things to do, and you can do this with any melee that kind of occurs, even like in the later waves. Provided this nibbler on this pillar is here, you can just simply gather your other melee, gather the melee that's around you and bring him to that pillar, stand next to the nibbler, and it's a free, really good chin spot. So, pretty simple to do. Whenever you see them going to this pillar and you see a melee on the field that you know you can drag, just come and stand next to it, and you'll have something in a chinnable area. It's a little bit awkward with 2 melees, if anything, but especially for the first couple of melees with bats, this is really nice to do. Especially in later waves with like major and melee, you can do this as well. So likewise with the other example, this one here is now a west pillar example. This is just an easy one because there's a blob there, but you could very easily drag a melee over to that nibbler. You can drag bats down from the south, and often get it such that you can chin that nibbler on that pillar and hit everything else as well. So, in short, whenever you have a south pillar or a west pillar nibbler spawn, think about things that you can drag over there when you have the free time to do so, and you're not just, you know, wasting time running over there. As long as you can get there easily, it's generally worth it, and you'll end up with some really nice chin numbers, chin XP drops. This movement here on the west pillar is another relevant movement to use with chins. Going down just to the middle of the pillar over here will drag whatever NPC that you're working with, be it Ranger or the Major, into a position where you're now able to chin said stack and attack the big NPC at the same time, because currently wherever they spawn, their tiles don't overlap. But again, if you decide to pull it down just one tile, it now will overlap, so it's another free good chin spot that allows you to hit both the things on the pillar and the NPC that spawns there. So to finish up, I don't really want to run into any of like the super late wave stuff beyond just to point out a couple of things. And first thing is that a lot of the time that you need to make up to get really nice times comes from super fast wave solves. With regards to the killing the Major first and engaging it really quickly. And that comes with practice, so it's not something that can really be taught beyond saying like, oh, you know, you can attack from here and you can instantly set this up, blah blah blah. It's something you have to experience and learn and do more of to get good at. So I think I'll leave it at that. And the other kind of important thing to realize is that when you're doing speedruns like this, there is a degree of variance that increases, and the more you end up doing, the more likely you are at some point to get some good RNG. And when it comes to speedruns, specifically the Inferno, speedrunning the Inferno, you have to understand your limits. You have to understand that yes, it's RNG, and at times you have to play that RNG, and at other times you're going to get played by the RNG. They're just throwing in this clip here as an example of like not caring about HP at all, because the runtime's not that great. If I want to make up time, I really have to stretch it. And you know, it's just kind of funny at the end of the day that you can survive things like that and get away with it. It's not so much to be saying you should be overconfident and really chance things, but when you are pushing those really good times, sometimes you have to have a little bit of fun with it, and at the same time also risk it for the biscuit. I think that's just about, again, all from me on this. So hopefully this shed some light on some really interesting, in-depth sort of speedrun mechanics that you might be using, and or some cool chin setups, whatever it may be. But regardless, I hope it helped. And I think this will probably be a final touch on the Inferno stuff for quite a while, since this has covered mostly pretty much everything that I was looking forward to covering, with the exception of maybe some xzact skips and things, which I might do a little thing on. But yeah, again, if you're interested in joining the Inferno Discord, the link will be in the description as always, and so will be the full run that I used for the sub 53, sub 54, sub 55 run anyway. But that'll all be in the description below. Yeah guys, that's all. I'll see you later. Take care and goodbye.